Right. Now we're going to dig into the four 331, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I guess that's 5 standards that are really safety oriented and the whole subpart S. So we're going to cover them. Each one of them is not too long, but we're going to cover them one at a time here. So let's get going. 1910.33.1a covered work by both qualified and unqualified persons. Now, this is an unusual thing in OSHA. Mostly they say only qualified person can do this, and just if you're unqualified, just go away, But now they're saying they're going to be work performed by qualified and unqualified persons. The provisions of 1910.331 through 335 cover electrical safety related work practices for both qualified persons, those who have training in avoiding the electrical hazards of working on or near exposed energized parts, and unqualified persons, those with little or no such training, working on, near, or with the following installations. And this is in my note up here. 1910 to 331 to 335 are mentioned in this scope section. Here's what they are. We're going to cover them by one. This section here, 332 is training. 333 is selection and use of work practices. And that's where there are lockouts in there too. Use of equipment, safeguards for personnel protection. We're going to cover each of those in our own presentations. And 399 is definitions, and it's huge. Some of these will be discussed in some of these other presentations, but the definition thing is gargantuan, and I don't think to go over it would be a good use of time, but you can look at it. So I wanted to throw that in here just to kind of let you know when they talk about 1910 to 335, that's what they're talking about. So premises wiring, installations of electrical conductors and equipment within or on buildings or other structures and on other premises such as yards, carnival, parking, and other lots and industrial substations. Wiring for connection to supply, installations of conductors that connect the supply of electricity and other wiring, installations of other outside conductors on the premises. So that's A1. So we go back to this. That's work covered by both qualified and unqualified. All right. Optical fiber cable. We're still on it. Installations of optical fiber cable where such installations are made along with electric conductors. See 1910.399 for the definition of qualified person. See 1910.332 for training requirements that apply to qualified and unqualified persons. And this is 1910.399, qualified person. One who has received training in and has demonstrated skills and knowledge in the construction and operation of electric equipment and installations and the hazards involved. So now the notes are bigger than the definition. Note 1. Whether an employee is considered to be a qualified person will depend upon various circumstances in a workplace. For example, it is possible, in fact likely, for an individual to be considered qualified with regard to certain equipment in the workplace, but unqualified as to other equipment. That makes sense too. An employee who is undergoing on-the-job training. Now, this is an interesting paragraph. An employee who is undergoing on-the-job training and who, in the course of such training, has demonstrated an ability to perform duties safely at his or her level of training, and who is under the direct supervision of a qualified person, is considered to be a qualified person for the performance of those duties. So a trainee can do unqualified trainee can do the duties of a qualified person after they have demonstrated an ability to perform those duties safely at their level of training and under the direct supervision of a qualified person. That's interesting. Other cover work. These provisions 3135 also cover work performed by unqualified persons on, near, or with the installations listed in paragraph C1 through C4 of this section. Work performed by qualified persons near the installations listed in paragraph C1 through C4 of this section, when that work is not on or directly associated with those installations. It's unusual wording. So this is C, excluded work by qualified persons. The provisions of 31 through 35 do not apply to work performed by qualified persons on or directly associated with the following installations. Okay. This is excluded by qualified persons. So these provisions don't apply to work performed by qualified persons on or directly associated with the following installation with qualified persons only. Generation, transmission, and distribution installations. Installations for the generation, control, transformation, transmission, and distribution of electrical energy, including communication and metering, located in buildings used for such purposes or located outdoors. So this is basically your power companies. Note, work on or directly associated with installations of utilization equipment used for purposes other than generating, transmitting, and distributing electric energy, such as installations which are in office buildings, warehouses, garages, machine shops, or recreational buildings, or other utilization installations which are not an integral part of a generating installation, substation, or control agent, is covered under paragraph A1 of this section. Another note, for work on or directly associated with utilization installations, an employer who complies with the work practices of 1910.269 will be deemed to be in compliance with 1910.333C and 1910.335. However, the requirements of 1910.332, 333A and B, and 34 apply to all work on or directly associated with utilization installations, regardless of whether the work is performed by qualified or unqualified persons. So they're really trying to muck things up here. And they're not very clear. I mean, what they, all these qualifications stuff, but you know, oh yeah, these persons are qualified here except for these, and then they're qualified in certain paragraphs. It can be confusing. Another note, work on or directly associated with generation, transmission, or distribution installation includes work performed directly on such installations, such as repairing overhead or underground distribution lines or repairing a feed water pump for the boiler in a generating plant. Work directly associated with such installations, such as line clearance, tree trimming, and replacing utility poles, when that work is covered by 1910.269. Work on electric utilization circuits in a generating plant, provided that such circuits are commingled with installations of power generation equipment or circuits, and the generation equipment or circuits present greater electrical hazard than those posed by the utilization equipment or circuits, such as exposure to higher voltages or lack of overcurrent protection. That work is covered by 269. C2, communications installations. Installations of communication equipment to the extent that the work is covered by under 268. Installations in vehicles, installations in ships, watercraft, railway rolling stock, aircraft, or automotive vehicles other than mobile homes and recreational vehicles. Interesting, so I'll say railway rolling stock. So they're not talking about railway stations, just the rolling stock, stuff on the rails. Automotive vehicles other than mobile homes and recreational vehicles. And again, that makes sense. You know, my cars, and you're talking about mobiles on RVs. It makes sense that there's something different there. Railway installations. Installations of railways for generation, transmission, transformation, transmission, or distribution of power used exclusively for operation of rolling stock, or installation of railways used exclusively for signaling and communication purposes. And that's all of that standard. So that's, again, a little bit confusing the way they throw in all this stuff and all these exceptions, but that's the way it is. So, all right, that's the 331. So guess which one's next? 332.